Good evening. Welcome to the Graduate Center and to this evening's Lloyd Old and Constance Old lecture. I'm David Olin, Interim Associate Provost and Dean for Academic Affairs here at the Graduate Center, and I hasten to add, a member of the music faculty. The Graduate Center is the principal doctorate-granting institution of the City University of New York, offering more than 30 doctoral degrees from anthropology to urban education and housing more than 30 research centers. We are a community of 7,000 students, scholars, and researchers dedicated to the idea that learning is a public good. We're also a prominent platform for public performance, discussion, and debate. The Graduate Center is fortunate to have a distinguished music program as well as the highly regarded Brooke Center for Music Research and Documentation. One of our great strengths has been in the study, creation, and performance of 20th and 21st century music. This series on music in 21st century society highlights something very dear to us, and we're grateful to Constance Old and her late brother Lloyd for their commitment to this vibrant series. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to Barbara McKenzie, the able and tireless director of the Brooke Center, to introduce this evening's program.
Thank you, David, and good evening, everyone. As David mentioned, my name is Barbara Dobbs McKenzie, and I'm director of the Barry S. Brooke Center for Music Research and Documentation. And it's my great pleasure to join David in welcoming you all here to the Graduate Center for the fourth lecture in our annual series, Music in 21st Century Society. First, let me briefly introduce our center to you. The Brooke Center is a scholarly facility closely associated with the music programs, the doctoral programs in music here at the Graduate Center. Its objectives are to provide a setting for wide-ranging research and documentation activities in music, and to disseminate the results of its activities to the scholarly community and the world at large through publications, conferences, exhibitions, and public events such as tonight's. Currently, there are 10 projects at the Brooke Center, comprising the study of Iberian music, musical life in New York City in the second half of the 19th century, French and Francophone musical cultures, the history of music as represented in art images, free reed instruments, the composer Yannis Xenakis, and the lecture series Music in 21st Century Society, of which tonight's event is the fourth. The Brooke Center also houses Répertoire International de Littérature Musicale, more commonly known as RILM, which publishes RILM Abstracts of Music Literature, the world's leading online index to writings about music. Now on to tonight's event. The Brooke Center series, Music in 21st Century Society, aims to present talks and debates by major cultural figures addressing the changing consumption, creation, contexts, and valuations of music in today's society. The series is inspired and supported by Constance Old and her brother, the late Dr. Lloyd Old. For years, the Olds shared a passion and curiosity about the role of music in contemporary society, and this series is an outgrowth of that interest. Sadly, Dr. Old died in 2011, a few months before the series was inaugurated in April 2012 by the late, great Charles Rosen. But his sister, Constance Old, has steadfastly carried on the series since then. The second lecture took place in the spring of 2013 with the eminent music writer and critic Paul Griffiths. And last fall, the incomparable Philip Glass appeared on this stage in conversation with another remarkable musician, Claire Chase. For tonight's event, the fourth in our series, we're very honored to have David Harrington, founder of the world-renowned Kronos Quartet, in conversation with the host and managing editor of NPR's On the Media, Brooke Gladstone. I would like to thank our wonderful donor, Constance Old, who's here tonight and who makes this series possible. Please join me in thanking her for bringing this evening to all of us. And I also would like to especially thank Anthony Pizarra, who has been the curator of all 4 events in this series, meaning that he's done all the hard work to bring these things to fruition. Thank you so much, Anthony. This wouldn't be happening without you either. He may be running around backstage trying to get organized for us. And finally, we're very grateful for the help and support of Public Programs Office and the excellent music department here at the Graduate Center, our partners in bringing this evening to you. Let me outline the way the evening will proceed, and then I'd like to introduce the evening's speakers. David Harrington, the founder of the Kronos Quartet, will talk to us tonight about how postmodern eclecticism changed the string quartet in a conversational format with NPR's Brooke Gladstone. There will be a musical interlude during the talk, which reminds me that this is a very good moment to turn off your cell phones or anything else that might make noise that we don't want to hear during the music or the talk. So please do take a minute to turn those things off. The musical interlude will comprise two different string quartets from Face the Music, the Pannonia Quartet and Quartet This Side Up. And they'll play a couple of pieces for us. We'll hear a piece commissioned by the Kronos Quartet called Pannonia Boundless by the wonderful contemporary composer Aleksandra Vrebalov, who's here with us tonight also. And we will hear three movements from Paris Lavidis String Quartet No. 2. And he will also be the first violinist in that performance, the composer will be. Finally, Brooke Gladstone will moderate a question and answer session with the audience. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers this evening. Brooke Gladstone is, of course, very well known as a journalist. She's currently the host and managing editor of the award-winning NPR news magazine On the Media. An expert on trends in the press, Ms. Gladstone has contributed many articles to national newspapers, magazine, blogs, and much more, including the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, The Observer, and Slate. She's appeared on TV in such shows as PBS's Bill Moyer's Journal and The Colbert Report, and is the recipient of 2 Peabody Awards, a National Press Club Award, an Overseas Press Club Award, and many others. In addition to her wide-ranging journalism, she's also very engaged with and knowledgeable about music, having written a number of record reviews, liner notes, including for recordings of the Kronos Quartet, and appeared in talks such as tonight's. We are indeed fortunate and thrilled to have her here at the Graduate Center this evening. And now our guest of honor, violinist David Harrington founded the world-renowned Kronos Quartet in 1973. It is not overstating the case to say that the Kronos Quartet has had a huge impact on music in our society, including on the core repertoire of the string quartet and on our conception of what a so-called classical concert is, in part by including all kinds of music in their concerts, from pop to world music, from early music to jazz, from tango to the avant-garde, from medieval Armenian lamentations to contemporary Icelandic indie rock, and much more. The Kronos, which was founded and has been shaped by David Harrington through these decades, are dedicated to commissioning new works and collaborating with contemporary artists. He and his players have, in fact, introduced over 600 new works to the repertoire. From 2003, Harrington has been involved in the so-called Under 30 project, commissioning a new work each year by a composer under 30 years of age. And the impact of Harrington and the Kronos extend far beyond the repertoire, to generations of performers and to building new audiences for the traditional concert hall, audiences which are defined not by their allegiance to a particular genre or style, but rather by their musical sensibilities. The influence on musical repertoire, performance, and audience has been enormous. And now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming David Harrington and Brooke Gladstone.
Hello. Can you hear us okay? Are we too loud?
One.
Okay. David, say something.
11111.
Okay. So, I've known David for a long time, but it is really an interesting experience to have a long conversation with him in front of a lot of people. And I think I'm going to find out a lot of things that I never knew before. So here's a question that I should have asked you years ago. You once said that your whole interest in music started with a single chord. Now, you started playing when you were 9 years old? So what was the chord?
The chord I'm talking about, my interest in the string quartet started after I became a member of the Columbia Record Club. When I was... The mic isn't working. Columbia Record Club, how's that?
Let me move it a little higher up.
All right.
Okay.
How's that? 1, 2, 3?
All right.
You know what, I'm just gonna hold it.
Okay.
All right. So, in 1961, I was reading a biography of Beethoven. And I got to the place where the biography was dealing with the late quartets. Well, I'd never heard a late quartet. And right at that time, Columbia Records released the Budapest Quartet, performing all of the Beethovens. And if you sent in a penny, you got to choose 5 records. And I said,
penny?
A
Really?
penny, yes. Yeah, and then your parents are stuck for all the records. It was a pretty good marketing thing, actually. But one of the choices was a late quartet. And so I, among several other recordings, I chose the late quartet, Opus 127 of Beethoven. And so a couple weeks later, it arrived. And in addition to hearing Isaac Stern do this and Bernstein do this, I heard the Budapest Quartet play Opus 127. And that opening chord has remained this incredibly powerful force in my life ever since. And I'm probably doing exactly the same thing today that I did in 1961. What I did is I went down to the public library and I checked out the score and the parts to the Beethoven and called up some friends, and we got together in a practice room at the University of Washington, and I remember giving the cue for the opening chord, and for about 1/10 of a second, it sounded like the record. And
Yeah, but David, what doesn't make sense there is...
But wait, there's more. Ever since then, I've believed in those 10ths of seconds and those moments in music that can actually totally change your perspective, change your knowledge of things, can open new vistas, new doors, new windows. It's happened to me.
How old were you?
12.
So what was a 12-year-old reading a biography of Beethoven for anyway?
Well, my grandmother had given me there were these 2 volumes called, it was like Lives of the Great Composers. I don't know if you remember those. I can't remember the author. David Ewan was one of the authors, and there was another author. And I used to go to sleep reading these. I don't know, I just found them interesting. And especially guys like Schubert and Mozart and Wagner, and I just was interested. And then there was the biography of Beethoven. I mean,
Yeah, it's a good story. But here, so now you've set up the situation where a young man, a boy might understand that there's transcendence in these brief moments. But certainly you did not devote your life to the canon, the very people you were reading about. You went in a completely different direction, and having known you for so long, I know that though you are very soft-spoken and slow to anger, you have sinews of steel. I just wonder how you had the idea, much less the temerity, to essentially step away from the canon and from the tuxedos that dress up the whole string quartet experience.
Well, here's what happened. So, for the first several years after playing that chord for the first time, I just got addicted, really, to playing music of Beethoven and Haydn and Mozart and Schubert. And then I think I was 14, and I remember looking at a globe and just thinking to myself, all of the quartet music that I've ever heard or ever played was written by 4 guys that lived in the same city.
Yeah.
That lived in the same city. This microphone is,
Yeah, that's just it. It's this part right there.
that part, okay, there we are. How's that? Okay. And that seemed absurd, really weird. And I just decided that it was time to learn what music from other cities sounded like.
And when was that?
Age 14. And by the time I was 16, I'd met a composer. And we were at his home playing his music.
Someone we would know?
You might know him. His name is Ken Benshoff. Mm-hmm. He's now 81. And many years later, he wrote the very first piece for Kronos. And if you're interested in hearing it, it's on our 25th anniversary box set. It's called Traveling Music. And over the years, Ken has written, I think, 7 or 8 pieces for us. Mm-hmm. But
so you heard a contemporary composer.
yeah, and when I was about 15, I was hearing music of Bartok, and I was hearing... I went to a high school that was right by a record store, and that was cool, because, you could cut gym class and English class and... what else did I cut? Geometry. That was a big one. That was a big one. And in those days, they had listening booths, and they let you open up the LPs.
Really?
Yeah.
You could break the shrink wrap.
Yeah, and that's where I heard Edgard Varese and Thelonious Monk for the first time, and Charles Ives. And so the vocabulary just got larger and larger when I was in early years of high school.
So, what was the state of contemporary classical music when you began Kronos?
That's really hard to add. I can put it this way. My wife and I have been together for a long time. And on our very first date, we shared records. Okay, she gave me 2 of her favorite records, and I gave her 1 of my favorite records.
And so the relationship has proceeded on those lines.
Yeah, yeah. She gave me a Bob Dylan and a Joan Baez. Okay. I gave her the lyric suite of Alban Berg. And so we each listened that night independently, and we had another date the next day. And I got all these points for being totally bizarre. And I think maybe I'm still getting those points even today sometimes. But fast forward to 1973, when Kronos eventually had our first concert. The music we played was Bartók, Webern, Hindemith, and an older piece of Ken Benshoff's that I'd played when I was in high school. And Regan, my wife, came to that concert. There were 8 people in the audience. 5 of them were my family members. And after the concert, we were talking about things, and she said, "How come there were no women composers?"
Huh.
She had never been to a string quartet concert before, and she grew up hearing Joan Baez, and just think it was bizarre for her. Okay, so the state of music that I knew about at that point, I didn't know a woman composer, okay? There was no African music that I knew of for string quartet. There was no Asian music that I knew of. There were these vast blank spots in musical information that I didn't even know how to find out about. And so from the very earliest days of Kronos, I've spent my life trying to learn more about what is out there and trying to find people that might be able to contribute new imagery, new words to the vocabulary, new sounds, yeah.
Well, you famously said, and I've quoted it a lot, that it's not about being beautiful or ugly, the sound of the music. It's about kicking ass and telling the whole story. And I guess that's what you mean about those great blank spaces of information that you wanted to fill in, and you have from every single continent. And you have about every single mood. And there doesn't seem to be, at least that I can think of, any area, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or it's Bollywood or it's Tuvan throat singing, that you haven't explored in one way or another, in a profoundly respectful way, but also in a way that transforms it, because it is a collaboration. And I wonder sometimes, do you sit at night, when you're sleepless, do you think, there must be some Antarctic music that I just have to get to?
Well, there's all kinds of sounds going on within the ocean. And one thing I've discovered is we can... There is so much to learn, and there's so many things. I could live to be 500 years old, and there would not be a lack of new things that could be done in this medium. So while I think the early history of the string quartet gave us this amazing foundation. I mean, if you think what Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, and Schubert gave to the string quartet in about 77 years, maybe 78 years, if you think, 1750 to 1828 when Schubert died. It's one of the most amazing artistic foundations that any art form has. It's truly amazing. And what I've hoped to do is to use the power of that foundation and the emotional scope that so much of that early music has, and extend it. And of course, composers have been inspired by that foundation. I mean, shortly after that, then there was Schumann, and there was Brahms and Mendelssohn, and there was Debussy and Ravel and Bartók, and Webern and Berg and Schoenberg, and later there was Terry Riley and Morton Feldman and Steve Reich, and
One of my favorite albums of yours is called Early Music, and it's a sort of seamless interweaving of ancient music, or early music, and contemporary music in which you hear the relationships profoundly, and they play off each other. It's one of many amazing records you've done. How has it changed? It strikes me that initially the emphasis was on contemporary music, people working right now who never had an opportunity to play. How many pieces have you commissioned over the years?
870 some.
870. There are some composers, many composers, I would imagine, who would never have ever been heard but for Kronos Quartet. And there are others who had a brief moment and disappeared until you found them again, something they will readily and gratefully concede. Do you feel like it's your job to ensure that the voices of contemporary composers are heard?
I was thinking about that today. What is a musician's job? And I think our first job is to be kind of inhabit as fully as we can the realm of notes. And to me, a musical note, is like an opportunity. It's an opportunity for a composer to give us their sense of the universe, their sense of wonder, their sense of music. And for a performer, it's an opportunity to make that note better than we did the last time. Okay? And I think that every musician in the world tries to do that. And for an audience, there's this slight chance that one of those notes might be that E-flat major chord or some other musical moment that can totally change your life and propel you into something you never thought you would be able to be a part of. And we need all three of those elements. We need the person that has that. This microphone's driving me nuts here. But anyway, we need the person that has the original experience. We need the performers, but we need the audience. And I think of myself, increasingly, I think of myself as a member of the audience. And I don't really think of myself as a violinist. In fact, it's quite a few years. I deal with the violin, but for me, my instrument is the string quartet.
I want to roll this back now. I know that there's a unique relationship every artist has with every audience member, and that as a function of art, you want to make every note better than before. But you're looking for those notes in particular places, and you always have, since the beginning. And so the question is that other than the moment of performance here, you are adding to, basically, you've been writing over the last 40 years. The quartet has been writing the history of contemporary classical music. If I can use the word classical music, you'd probably not want me to. So the question
What is it? What is classical?
I don't know.
Okay, neither do I. What is music?
Whatever it is, you're building a history of it. So this larger purpose, how has it changed? It hasn't been the exact same for 40 years. The nature of the music seems to have shifted. You are looking for those notes in slightly different places, or you've in your travels you have started hitting other places. I don't know what that process is. I know it goes on inside of there somewhere.
Well, I think the process that I have is to try to keep my ears open, no matter what happens in life. And sometimes it's hard to do, and sometimes, it'd be great if the audience always flew to San Francisco.
I know. I don't know how you do that.
It would be really cool if that were to happen. Then the jet lag could be somebody else's problem. But that's not the way it is. But having jet lag can be a really good thing for a musician because you can't sleep. You can't sleep. But you can listen. And I always travel with a bunch of things that I haven't heard before. And a regular part of my day is to explore. I love it. I love to learn new things. And I have confidence that other people like to learn new things. And I know that for sure. My grandkids love to learn new things. It's fun. And I believe that a concert can be a place for learning and for exploring and for opening oneself up to possibilities.
How has the quartet changed?
Well, I think each piece we've ever played has changed us. And it changes the idea of what a concert can be. So in November of 1973, when we played our first concert, there was I mentioned all the things some of the things that didn't exist in our music. And so over the years, I've tried to find ways of bringing elements that hadn't been there before into our concerts. And every once in a while, there's a piece that gets written that changes what's available to us and what
Give me an example.
Well, I guess I should say that in summer of 1973 is when I first heard Black Angels on the radio. Right at that point.
That's a piece by George Crumb was inspired in part by the Vietnam War. I think he said that there were all sorts of crazy things in the air, and it made its way. They found their way into the music.
Yes.
Which had all sorts of crazy things in it as well.
Well, they're not that. They're not that
yeah.
crazy.
Not in retrospect.
Right. And what he actually said, just to be really precise, he said there were strange things in the air.
Terrifying things.
And I was talking to somebody last night about this, about how some musicians, not very many, but some, almost seem like they have antennae that are aware of even the future. I mean, imagine somebody like Mahler, somebody like Bartok. Every once in a while, there's somebody that exists that just perceives things in a really special way.
And Black Angels?
For me, Black Angels totally changed my life because all of a sudden I had a song. I got, as a late teenager, early 20s, you have to remember that's when the American war in Vietnam was going on. There was the draft issue. It's like what to do with one's life. There was all these issues. And we had just come back from a year in Canada, and we had the radio on late one night, and all of a sudden, this music came out of the radio. And I'd never heard anything like it. And it brought together many things for me. It brought together the world of Jimi Hendrix. It brought together, there was Schubert, there was early music. As you say, there were shouts. There were all kinds of sounds that I hadn't heard. I didn't even know if it was string quartet music, frankly, at first. And I had to play that piece. I didn't even have a choice. had no choice. I was magnetized to this. So I, again, called up the publisher, found out his music was published by Peters Edition here in New York, called them up, got them to send me a copy of the score. It arrived, it was this huge score. Never seen a score that big. And I realized, okay, in order to play this, I had to get a group going that was going to really be serious. And we started out rehearsing 5 days a week. From the very first rehearsal, it was 5 days a week. And that year we played Black Angels for the first time.
And so that formed the sort of approach that the quartet would take from that time on?
Well, another thing about Black Angels is it required amplification. And the very first time we ever played Black Angels, each one of us in the group was our own sound engineer. And I just made sure I was the last one to check the sound, and then I turned the whole thing up loud, really loud. And it took us many years before we actually had our own traveling sound engineer, before that was financially possible or we even knew somebody that could do it well. And it was Different Trains by Steve Reich that he wrote in 1988. And when we started playing that frequently on a tour, we realized we needed to have our own sound engineer. And so Kronos became a quintet at that point. And shortly after that, it was clear that the concert halls we were playing in had absolutely no visual impact at all. There was no production quality. And so we had begun to play in nightclubs in San Francisco, in places where there was cool lighting, and then we'd go to a concert hall somewhere, and there'd be 4 different colors of chairs and fluorescent lights that we were playing, and it just didn't seem like we were making a presentation. And so we decided to change that. And every little thing that's happened along the way has been a result of trying to focus the music, focus the audience on the music, to make concerts that seemed more fun, more interesting, had more elements of the world that we were learning about. We've been very consistent, actually, about those things. Yeah.
Although if you look at a montage of pictures, yeah, the world keeps changing and you change with it. You're not hippies or angry young men and women anymore. You're
oh, you know what though?
In your style,
Oh.
in your attire.
Oh.
I know you're just as furious as you ever were.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have so much more I want to talk to you about. I have a half hour, and I think that I may have used it up, which is if we started at 7:15. So we will come back for a Q&A. If anybody has any questions that they want asked, you might want to track them down because we'll launch right into it, or else I'll start asking David a bunch of more questions myself. David, we heard about the group. Barbara mentioned what's coming up. Do you want to say something else before we bring them up?
Sure. I'd like to say that the Pannonia Quartet is a group that was named after a piece that was written for us by Aleksandra Vrebalov. Am I going the right way? Right there, okay. And so Aleksandra wrote this piece, Pannonia Boundless, I think it was in about 1997. And we recorded it, and the Pannonia Quartet is going to come out and play Pannonia Boundless for us, and it's been a huge thrill for the members of Kronos to be involved with this group over the years now.
Face the Music?
Face the Music, yeah. Face the Music is a national treasure that exists here in New York and is really the result of the dedication and the vision of Jenny Underkoffler.
All right.
So here's Face the Music.
We'll turn off our mics. the next quartet, I just want to take a moment to talk about a phase of the Kronos Quartet that we haven't talked about. You've worked with those musicians, right? They're brilliant. That was brilliant. Thank you. And I wanted to talk about Adam. And because I know there was a time in your life when you thought the quartet would run its course and you'd shut it down. And you don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah. Well, in April of 1995 is when my son died. And for the longest time, there simply wasn't any music inside. There was silence. And eventually, I was able to play a concert. And that was a very weird concert because it's almost like the notes were replacing notes that had been inside before. It was it's hard to describe it really, and so it will almost be 20 years. It almost is 20 years now since then, and
He would have been 36?
So a lot of things have happened since then. One is that the community of musicians helped my family so much, really. Not only the members of the quartet, but our staff and composers and performers from all over the world and friends, of course. And I think that certain events totally change everything, and that happened. And eventually, it became clear to me that the work that I should do, that I had to do, not only had to do with attempting to be certain that this art form was vital, but that also there might be a way to move things in a direction of working with the next generations of players.
You've thrown yourself, I don't even know how you had anything left to throw, frankly, given the schedule that you have and the, it seems like 24/7 listening you do, but you managed to eke out so much training time. And this is something that you've said, the reverberations of Adam's death seem to have increased rather than diminished with the years, and rather than having the idea of shutting the quartet down, you seem to have shifted into a kind of frenzy to keep it going. I mean, not necessarily the quartet, the Kronos Quartet, but an entity like it that is in touch with what's going on around the world at that moment.
Well, what I've discovered is that my Adam feels most alive for me when I'm discovering new things, when I'm working with kids, when I'm exploring music that I've never been a part of that might be useful to members of my family, to our audience, to other players. You know, it was really great to hear this piece. When I was their age, I was the youngest member of the audience at quartet concerts, and I always sat in the front row. And now at my age, I get to sit on stage and listen. I mean, this is really cool, I have to tell you.
And so we just heard this wonderful group. Can you just give us a sentence about the group we're about to hear.
Yes, well, okay, we're going to hear Quartet This Side Up, and they're going to be playing music by their first violinist, Paris Lavidis. And I haven't heard most of this piece yet, so I get to learn something new too. Here we are. Quartet This Side Up.
Come on up, guys. Sorry for changing the program. Questions? Seriously, we're happy to take some questions once you've caught your breath. There are mics down the side of each of these aisles here. And while we're waiting
I
for...
have a question.
Sure.
How come there wasn't such a thing as Face the Music when I was 12 years old? You know, for those people that think the world is all falling apart and everything is always only getting worse, I think this is a clear example that that is not true. And
Now, this is not a commercial announcement, but you have created an organization to train, to expose kids to this kind of music, to show them how to play it, how to recognize it. What's that called?
What's what?
Your
Oh, the Kronos Performing Arts Association?
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh.
Well, we just had to figure out a way to survive in an American society that basically didn't care about such things. And every musician needs to find ways of doing that. And in fact, one of the things we're going to be doing tomorrow is talking to some of the parents of these kids to give them confidence, the parents that is, that music is an important thing and that it's a good thing and that they can, these kids will, the world needs more musicians, not less. Musicians, as a community worldwide, I can say that musicians are setting examples for peaceful solutions to things in the world. And there's not a lazy musician in the world. These kids work really hard.
You'd never know.
Yeah.
You would never know.
And I think music is it's the best thing humanity's ever come up with, in my opinion. And there's a question over here.
Let's see. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's just an honor to be in your presence, both of you, I want to say. I'm an enormous admirer of your entire life and what you shared with us tonight. Your personal story, too, was extremely moving, and thank you. Ms. Gladstone, I don't think I could exist without NPR in my life. So anyway, I wanted just to ask, how did Face the Music come together with you? How did you learn about them?
That's a good question. This was about 3 years ago, and it occurred to me, and this is okay. Here's what happened, and I was saying to someone earlier today that ultimately so many things come from personal experiences. So it was in January of 2003 that I became a grandfather for the first time. And that was absolutely a miraculous moment. And a lot of young musicians have asked me whether they should be parents, should have kids. And I've always said to every one of them, I said, I can't answer that question for you. I said, but after January of 2003, what I've been able to say is that everybody in the world ought to be a grandparent. So you need to figure it out for yourself, And so what also happened is, as you know, that was right when the George W. Bush administration was plotting the second invasion of Iraq. And I got incredibly depressed. So there was ecstasy on one side, and there was total fear for my family, for many families at that point. And even a violinist could have told you what was going to happen. Even a violinist. And being gone 6 months a year from my family became a big challenge for me personally, and I really began to question whether what I was doing was in any way helpful to anybody. And I didn't share this with the other members of the quartet. I shared it only with my family. And then I realized I needed to talk to somebody that had a perspective that might be helpful. And I thought of all the voices I'd heard in my lifetime. And I realized the person I needed to talk to was Howard Zinn. And a friend of mine, David Barsamian, had interviewed Howard many times. So I called David and asked him if I could get Howard's phone number. And within an hour, I was on the phone. I was actually shaking like this, calling Howard Zinn. What was I going to say to him? Well, Howard's wife, Roz, answered the phone. And it became the easiest phone call I ever made in my life, because she said, Kronos, oh, we've been fans for 20 years, and Howard will be home in an hour, and he'd love to talk to you. And so an hour later, I called Howard back, and a month later, I was in his office, and I had one question for Howard Zinn, and that was, what can a normal person do? What can a normal person do? And Howard proceeded to tell me what a normal person could do. And the first thing he said was, you need to create a community. And I realized, well, we have a community. And it was from then on that I began to think I needed to know more about the larger community of musicians. And so I began to just explore what other people were doing around the world, around the country. And eventually I heard about Face the Music. And Howard said a few other things too, by the way. He said, people like George Bush are actually afraid of people like you. And that gave me a really good feeling. And I'll never forget, because shortly after that, we were playing in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and it wasn't so far from the White House. And I was so upset about this war that I went back to what I think is one of the great mythical performances of all time, and that's Jimi Hendrix's performance of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock. For me, that was, if I had to name one performance that I think is the great performance of any American musician, I would say that's it. And so we got our version of Hendrix's version of the Star-Spangled Banner. And I told our sound man, I said, I want George W. Bush to hear this in the White House. And so it was damn loud, I'll tell you. And we tried our best. I don't know if he heard it or not, but we tried. I don't know if I answered your question. Did it? Okay, all right.
I think that basically one would extrapolate that you want to basically inculcate the next generation with Howard Zinnian fervor, but I don't think that's really what you mean. Or it is.
Well, eventually Howard joined us at Carnegie Hall for alternative radio, and you may know that we dedicated the Floodplain album to Rosalind. And the last time I ever saw Howard, I was able to hand him that album, and what a beautiful relationship we had with him. Really beautiful, and
kept you in the world of music. So
well, you know what? Your husband Fred gave me many years earlier. Gave me I.F. Stone's phone number, and I had it in my wallet for years, and I did not call I.F. Stone. I did not. By the time I got the courage to do it, he was ill, and I decided I'm not making that mistake again. That's one thing musicians do. They learn from their mistakes, you know? We have to. We'd get booed off the stage if we didn't. And so I did learn that lesson, and I called Howard as soon as I got his phone number.
Any other questions for David? Oh, here comes someone.
We hear a lot about how particularly chamber music audiences are getting older and nobody is coming, and the future of the field is very bleak. And I'm wondering, what is your experience as you travel all around the world with the audiences that you attract, And do you have any advice for presenters to bring new and younger audiences into their halls?
Well, my experience is that our audience is getting younger and younger. And as I'm getting older and older, that's really cool. And I'm not so good at giving advice, probably because I don't take it very well. You know, I've always been kind of obstinate and you know. But I would say that one of the things that I'm hoping that we can, when we're working with the young musicians, that we can help them learn to make their own decisions about the music they want to play, about how they want to play it, that we can give them the tools to make decisions. And I think the more groups out there that can have an internal identity and that their audience knows exactly where they're coming from and why they're there. I think presenters should be finding those sorts of musicians, those sorts of experiences, and they're out there, they exist, I can tell you that for sure. And so I would encourage presenters of music to keep their ears open and explore. And you'll find some amazing things out there to present, and your audiences are going to love it.
I just want to say, you've heard it from the man himself. Music is a philosophy. It's a process. It's a collaboration. It's an exploration. All of those things are in the creation of music, and all of it has enriched all of our lives. And David Harrington, thank you so much.
I handed it to this gentleman. You talking about the little plastic thing? Oh, yes. I handed it to this gentleman right here.
So great. I'm heading out now. You guys are going to dinner with them, right?
We are. And I guess you can't come.
I just am not feeling very well, actually, so I took myself out of it. Okay. Great.
Oh,
Fantastic.
thank you very much. So nice to meet you. Great question, by the way.
And you knew it would be great.
Yeah, I'll give you my card.
And she's now in the neighborhood.
Oh,
I'm now in the yeah, I'm right at 37.
I only have one. It's still got all my contact information. Oh yeah, here, I've got one. Cutie one. Where are you?
32nd Street. 5th and Broad.
Oh my gosh, right around the corner.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So,
Pleasure.
it was so nice to meet you.
Hi, Elizabeth, by the way. Hello, Robert McKenzie.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you
Nice
very
to meet you.
much.
Thanks. Bye.
I've never met him.
I saw him already. Is he going to come tomorrow? Taha. I told Taha to take him to see Jet. You can Jet sort of push him along as I go see Taha, yes. Jet. Because he's too busy. Oh yes. Bye, we're leaving.
It was some sort of literary event around somebody who was respectable and spoke about him, and then some but there was an interest in literary element. Screech out, they're all kind of together.